This video is sponsored by Miniswap. Alright you lot, welcome back. Today we are going to have a little chat and you are going to assist me with a question, because for quite some time I was under the impression that Games Workshop makes or made the best miniatures around. When it comes to wargaming, hell, when it comes to just general fantasy or sci-fi miniatures, I have for a long time put Games Workshop at the very head of the list. They are the ones who produce the best looking models, the best looking designs, and when you buy the models they are the best produced as well. At least that's what I thought for quite some time. I'm not sure that I still believe that though, because as I've grown to appreciate just miniatures as a whole as opposed to Warhammer in isolation, there are a lot of very, very good models out there that frankly do reach the same standard that I've always held Games Workshop to. Now of course a lot of this is subjective. This is inherently a subjective video because we're going to be talking about and comparing things that to you maybe don't look anywhere near as good, but to me have something about them that maybe puts them ahead of what I'm used to. But for the longest time Games Workshop was the de facto place to look and buy models from, not just because they are the ones who make the miniatures for Warhammer, but because of all the miniatures available, those were the ones that I sort of attributed the things of being like the best quality and the best design to. The thing is, a lot's changed. A lot has changed. I still love me some Warhammer, but generally speaking, I'm more into miniatures than I am into wargaming these days. I still play, but I actually mess around with more stuff than I ever have before. I don't only play Warhammer 40k, and that was the only game that I played tabletop-wise for a long time. Things like the Dark Souls board game, God Tier, Trench Crusade, there's a bunch of different things that I've been trying, and with those switch-ups in what I play, there's also grown a deeper appreciation for miniatures as a whole, which has made me look quite firmly outside of the Games Workshop catalogue for a lot of stuff, especially for things like D&D. Now, of course, when it comes to Warhammer, really the first place that you're going to go to for miniatures is still Games Workshop. And if you're looking to expand or start a new army, but you don't want to pay Games Workshop prices, there's a way to do that, and that's through the second-hand market. And if you're buying second-hand, you want to check out Miniswap. These segues, they're just top tier these days, you know? Miniswap is an online marketplace for your second-hand miniatures, whether they're new in box, new on sprue, or they're fully painted, you can sell them on Miniswap. And if you're looking to expand an army or start something new and you don't want to pay those brand new prices, Miniswap is the place for you. It was created by hobbyists for hobbyists, and just looking at the front page right now, I've just noticed we have two rather fun looking Rogel Dawn battle tank conversions, going for a bit of a tank hunter look here. Oh, this is some nice work. This is some very nice work. I realise this is massively derailing what I was about to say, but you know what? I am an appreciator of tanks, as you know. I mean, 45 quid for a fully assembled, fully painted, kit-bashed Rogel Dawn? If you're looking for this specific type of conversion, that is solid. Like, you could repaint it if you wanted to, but that is very well done right there. Anyway, whether you're looking for Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, or really any of the other Games Workshop products, Miniswap has a huge catalogue of second-hand models, and that catalogue is growing by the day. Now, as already mentioned, you can search by new in box, new on sprue, partially assembled, fully assembled, or bits if you're doing a bit of kit bashing yourself, and you can filter by various painting standards, including, of course, unpainted and stripped. Remember, just because you don't want that rhino that's been sat in the box for the past 5 years, it doesn't mean that no one wants it, so chuck it on Miniswap and shift it onto someone who's looking for exactly that. If you sign up to Miniswap using my link in the description or in the pinned comment down below, you will get 0% seller commission for the first 90 days after sign up, and you'll get free shipping on your first order. Thank you very much to Miniswap for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. So when it comes to working out who makes the best miniatures, there's a bunch of different criteria, and each of them are complicated in their own way. Firstly, we've got design, right? I think it's fair to say that Games Workshop's designs are some of the best that you can find, specifically because you can look at how many people buy them as a good metric as to just how well received they are. I mean, if they are selling a metric shed load of Space Marines, which we know they are, we know that generally speaking, the Space Marine range has an aesthetic that is enjoyed by significantly more than any other range. Leaving aside the whole self-fulfilling prophecy of, you know, you make more Space Marines and more people will buy more Space Marines, whereas if you make less of everything else, people will buy less of everything else. There is an element to that to it, but I think it's fair to say that Space Marines aren't the best seller for the simple fact of people just keep being forced to buy them. They're the best seller because they resonate with a significant number of people, and I don't think that comes about from a range that is badly designed or in some way lacking quality. I mean, let's take the new Emperor's Children as a little bit of an example. They did really well and people absolutely loved them. They are something that we're familiar with, but there are significant twists and differences to mark them out as being something special and unique, and they are recognisably not what they used to be, but are also still recognisably Space Marine in nature. This is a very well-designed army. You could argue that the number of units could be a bit bigger, but the fact is, this is very nicely done, and most of the feedback that I've seen for these miniatures is that they are very, very nicely done, and these are not your standard Space Marine range. These are different, these have been altered, and they still get a lot of very positive attention. Now, something that is very different, but is still a very nicely designed set of miniatures, is the Infinity range from Corvus Belli. As an example, we've got the Pan-Oceania Army Pack, and I really like the aesthetic of this universe in these miniatures. There is something considerably more sleek, and I would suggest traditional sci-fi than a lot of the Games Workshop stuff, which tends to fall into a more rugged and, in some cases, just outright historical but in space kind of camp. But I think it's fair to say that these are sculpted really nicely. They're obviously painted well for the display images on the website, and stylistically there is a lot to like going on here. Something that is notable, however, is that, on the images at least, there is a certain crispness that isn't quite there compared to Games Workshop's offerings. Now, that's not to say that they look bad, because that's not true. They don't look bad at all. I think these look fantastic. But if there's one thing I think we can say Games Workshop usually nails, it is edges. And when I say sharp edges, I don't mean sharp like you're going to cut yourself on it. I mean how clean the lines are, you know? The thing is, the whole Night in Space thing, which is exactly what these last two models have been, they are a staple of the Space Marine range as well, but stylistically these are significantly different. Even though the armour feels a lot more advanced in some ways and is definitely more sleek and streamlined, the use of weapons that are pretty much just your standard fantasy sword but bigger still provides a really nice contrast, and it still works in this context just as much as it does with, say, a Black Templar Marshal holding a sword. With all that being said, though, I'd be lying if I said I preferred this to Games Workshop's Space Marine ranges, for instance. And that is in part down to just how clean Games Workshop miniatures are when you put them together. Now, returning to plastic miniatures for a second, there is something here that I don't think many people know about, and that is the fact that Archon Studio also have some sci-fi offerings in the form of the Rampart range. The thing is, Archon Studio makes some really nice miniatures, but in terms of their own IPs, they are focused mostly on fantasy, I think it's fair to say. So this lot, you're effectively getting a box of sort of Guard, but not actually Guard, because you can't call them that. But there's some definite Guard-esque feeling things going on here, right? Now, having put together a lot of miniatures from Archon Studio, I can attest to the quality of them, but to be blunt, these aren't their best offerings. They're fine, but they're not blowing anyone away. I suspect some of the difficulty here is also coming from the paint job, which is fine, but maybe a little basic for display pictures. By contrast, when you look at the Trench Crusade box they do, the Prussian Stostruppen Warband, these look significantly better, and I think these show much better what Archon Studio are capable of doing with their plastic minis. The detail on this lot are absolutely fantastic. They look brilliant, and a lot of those clean edges and crisp details that are, for me, a little bit lacking on the Infinity miniatures are present here. For my money, Archon Studio are pretty much nipping at the heels of Games Workshop when it comes to the quality of their plastic miniatures. They are right up close to them. The only thing that really holds them back for me personally is the personal preference thing. See, the plastic that Archon Studio uses is a little bit softer than Games Workshop's. It's not like bad to work with, it doesn't feel bad, but it's just not got the same consistency. But that's when the subjective side of things comes in, right? Because to some people, the softer plastic or the softer feel when you are taking the models off the sprues, that might be a positive for you. We can't talk about miniatures without also mentioning 3D printing as well. I'm sorry, I know that a lot of you don't have 3D printers or are not interested in 3D printing, and that's totally fine, but there are some absolutely fantastic models out there that if you have a 3D printer or you don't mind buying 3D printed miniatures, you will find some really, really good stuff. Obviously, I've got to mention Bestiarum Games because they are my absolute favourite of all the various STL makers out there, and the Bane Gunners here are some of the best traitor guard that I think you can find proxy-wise. The overall aesthetic is brilliant, the range of poses is nice, the way the guns have been modelled I really, really like, and they have that nice mix of old tech and new that just works super well. In this specific instance, I think these are better than any of the attempts that Games Workshop has made at Traitor Guard. And I'm sure plenty of you will disagree, but I just can't help it. I love these so much. Now, of course, something that has to be mentioned when we're talking about 3D printing is the whole thing of quality, because depending on the 3D printer you have, or the 3D printer that's been used to print the miniatures that you receive, you might get something that is simply not good enough. Now, that's something that can obviously be fixed with changing of settings and so on and so forth, but the fact is, if you buy a kit from Games Workshop and it is a relatively new plastic kit, you are most likely going to get a good experience. That's not always true of 3D printed miniatures, especially if you're buying third party. Hell, it's not even true when you're just printing your own at home. I mean, for all that I love my Reflex, it's a great 3D printer, it's fantastic. The fact is that I have occasionally overfilled the build plate, or I've clipped something into something else like an idiot and ignored the warning. There are things that can go wrong, and the fact is, at the end of the day, when it comes to putting models together that have been 3D printed, I don't enjoy it. I enjoy doing it with plastic. Plastic is by far my preferred material. I don't really enjoy putting together 3D printed miniatures, partially because there is that thing of, to get to the stage of putting it together, if you print it at home, you've had to mess around with the resin in the first place, and that's toxic and horrible, and I don't really like that aspect of it. Don't get me wrong, I like 3D printing stuff, or at least I like the result of 3D printing stuff. I still think it is borderline miracle technology. Being able to just go, I've found a thing, I would like it in 4 to 5 hours, send it over there, oh look, it's 4 to 5 hours later, I now have the thing that I wanted. That is basically magic, and you cannot convince me otherwise. It's brilliant. But unfortunately, that magic does require you to handle chemicals and things that there's still no real great way to dispose of, and I don't think the warnings around it are significant enough when you buy a 3D printer. There's a lot of educating yourself that has to go on before you can actually do anything with those machines. That's simply not the case when it comes to plastic. I mean, if you've got some super glue and a pair of snips, you're pretty much good to go. You're not good to go with a 3D printer and no gloves, no isopropyl alcohol, nothing to clean the things in, nothing to take the, supports off and put that. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing, and that can't be understated when it comes to talking about not just quality of the finished product, but quality of the experience. The quality of the finished product, 9 times out of 10, from my printer, is absolutely outstanding, and they are beautiful prints it comes out with. The quality of the experience of dealing with all of the resin and the cleanup and the disposal and etc., that's garbage, and that's always going to be garbage until someone comes up with some sort of magical fix-all solution for it, which seems kind of unlikely, doesn't it? Now, we're going to move on to fantasy in a second, because fantasy is actually where most of my focus goes now, especially playing D&D and running a D&D campaign. There's a lot of stuff I like to have ready to go at any given time, but before we get to fantasy, we need to talk about scenery, because scenery is one thing where I think, frankly, Games Workshop has, they've fallen behind. They've fallen massively behind. Scenery and terrain, it's not really their focus, to be fair, and they do some good pieces, but when it comes to dressing a table, when it comes to making a battlefield, making something that looks and feels thematic for a nice narrative game, no, Games Workshop don't really have that cornered anymore. They do have some good stuff. If we look at things like the Aegis Defense Line, they're nicely sculpted at least, and the boarding actions terrain is pretty decent, but the overall choice that they have, it's not great, and there's not a huge amount of it, and if you're playing like tournament stuff, it tends to get a little bit samey and repetitive. I think one of the biggest losses when it comes to Games Workshop is the Age of Sigmar / fantasy terrain. There used to be a really significant range of this stuff, and there just isn't anymore. The Warcry side of things used to be really, really good, but you only got those in big boxes, and they are pretty much all gone now, and I don't know that they're even going to do anything with Warcry from this point on, because they've been kind of radio silent on the whole thing for a while now. Realistically, there's just not much going on. You've got the faction-specific parts, you've got a few nice sets, like the Time-Worn Ruins. I think those look decent, but outside of 1 or 2 boxes, you're hard-pressed to fill a board with fun and thematic terrain from Games Workshop these days. That is an area where I think Archon Studio absolutely nail it. You know, they do some really good bits of scenery, and their boxes are very good value for how much stuff you get. I mean, 53 quid for the Eternal Cathedral, and that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot. And it goes together well, and it's modular, and you can move it around. It's nicely done, this stuff, and I know that because I've got a box of it. On the fantasy side of things, if you want your terrain to be able to do multiple duties, again, Archon are the place to go for me personally because of the Dungeons and Lasers terrain. Now, of course, this is obviously super specific, and you're not going to use this for wargaming necessarily. Although you could use things like the different packs of like scatter terrain, but for the most part, this is for your TTRPGs. It's not for your wargaming. The thing is, it's just so well done that I have a deep, deep appreciation for it. I use this stuff for D&D all the goddamn time, and so it's kind of hard not to default to, well, they do the best terrain, because for the thing that I spend a lot of time playing and, you know, doing tabletop-wise, it is. That being said, when we're talking wargaming, when we're talking taking a table and making it look like a battlefield or a specific theme for a narrative game, there is only one place that I default to now. And that is, again, not Games Workshop. It's actually Dark Fantastic Mills. Now, you've probably heard me talk about Dark Fantastic Mills before, but that's because they're fantastic. They do brilliant things. They have a great selection of scenery. A lot of it is very stylized, so it might not be your personal cup of tea, but I just think it's so good. The Argent Realm stuff looks absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favourites that they do. Likewise, the Jägerheim stuff is so good. Like, if you want a fight in the middle of a ruined city, you can do that and it will look great. Hell, if you want to fight in a not ruined town or in an actual castle, you can do that too. And the nice thing here is that, yes, buying a full castle is kind of expensive, but it's also available for home printing, which is significantly less expensive. Unless, of course, your printer dies mid-print, which is what mine did earlier today, so I've had to buy a new one. That makes it significantly more expensive than I was hoping, but hey, the fact is, I can print all of this, and I am going to do that because I just love it so much. Terrain-wise, though, I just think this website alone has Games Workshop kind of beat. Yeah, it might not specifically cater to faction-specific terrain, but for loading up a table and making it look really, really nice, you just can't go wrong with this stuff. Now let's talk about fantasy, because that's where my focus has been more than sci-fi over the last few years. Not just due to D&D, but also because I've ended up playing more Age of Sigmar than Warhammer 40k over the last few years, by quite a wide margin at that. And the thing is, Games Workshop does make some insanely good fantasy stuff. I mean, looking at the Spearhead for Cities of Sigmar, I mean, this is one of the best fantasy ranges. It just is. It looks absolutely fantastic. The design of the units is top-notch, the detail is super crisp. I have now put together a bunch of Cities of Sigmar, and they look great, they are fun to assemble. There's a lot going on when you want to paint them, I'm not going to lie, they're a little bit complex, but they are just very, very nice miniatures. I think they are some of the best things that Games Workshop do. But fantasy is also one of those places where Archon Studio starts to shine a little bit more, right? They have an ever-expanding range of fantasy miniatures, and frankly, a lot of them are very, very well done. There are a few things that can act as one-to-one stand-ins for Games Workshop products, and a lot of the time the value is decent as well. I mean, look at these happy lads. They are really, really fun. They're very cool. They're extremely creepy, and I think they have that nice, crisp sharpness going on that some other stuff lacks, you know? We'd be remiss to mention War Machine as well. Now, War Machine, I mean, technically, yes, fantasy, but also kind of edging towards the more, like, Magitech, steampunky side of things. Their more recent plastic stuff looks great. The Frozen and Forgotten box is good value for money, and I've put all of these miniatures together. They were fun. Super easy to assemble, the detail is really nice. This is again where we get fully into subjectivity though, because there is a more cartoony aspect to these that I know not everyone enjoys. In fact, the video where we went over these, most of you really liked them, but there were a few that just didn't think the style worked. Now, I really like it, but it is a departure. It is not the same visual style that you get from Games Workshop stuff. I think similarly with stuff like Kings of War, there is a stylistic difference, but the overall quality is very, very good. Like, that is a good looking model. It just is. The sculpting is top notch. I think the kind of cleanness, the sharpness is there where it needs to be. It is simply not the same as what Games Workshop are trying to do, but that in itself I think is a strength, because you don't want everything to be a clone of something else. You need things to have their own personalities. Plus, I mean, this is a giant mechanical ball that also seems to be a stove for cooking on. That is just a fantastic premise, and I'm glad it exists. Another game that I really want to mention as well, by the way, is Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings, and I have been super curious about this, and I'm going to take the plunge, I think, next month and just buy a box of something. I don't know what I'm going to buy a box of. I'm very tempted by this, which is the Weaver Court's Coil Dre, I think it's called. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but this is a chunky model. This is a big, big model. It should be, because it's €140. But this is fantastic. This is one of the best designed, I was going to say dragons. Is it really a dragon? I guess it is kind of. It's a dragon-shaped wood bird creature. Sure, I think this is absolutely stunning. Now, of course, it's helped by the fact that it's been painted to an extremely high standard. That is some lovely paintwork right there. But the overall concept for it is brilliant. The execution is outstanding. This has rocketed to the top of the list of things that I just want. I just want it to paint it. There is something about it that just is doing something for me. This is a model that I saw randomly and immediately fell in love with. One of the reasons I'm kind of drawn to Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings is because of this particular style. There's some really interesting and fun stuff going on here that I haven't really seen elsewhere. Things like this as well. So this is the Caryatids. This is very, very cool. This is very fun. Statues that seem to be borderline alive, but with sort of conjured strange black inky smoke forming weapons. This is just a very fun idea, and the execution is really, really good. It feels like there's some kind of high concept stuff going on with this setting that I really, really enjoy, but at the same time, you also have things that are just this guy. So this is just a crusading noble lord of the 100 Kingdoms. That's relatively, when I say bog standard, it sounds like an insult. It's not, but that's basically just a knight. It's just a guy in armour. There isn't anything particularly high concept going on here. It is fairly standard fantasy fare, but the thing is, this is alongside that, which is not fairly standard fantasy fare. The thing is, the difference between those various factions is one of the things that I enjoy so much about Age of Sigmar. Like, when it comes to a fantasy setting, Age of Sigmar is weird. It's weird in a very, very fun way. You've got your standard humans, your defenders of humanity that are just guys and gals in armour with a shield, a sword, or if they're really lucky, a gun, going up against sky dwarves and deep sea elves that manifest the ocean around them when they fight on land, and, you know, giants, just giants, huge giants. Like, all of that mixed together makes for a very fun setting, a very odd setting, but a very fun setting, and Last Argument of Kings seems to have that vibe down as well, which just makes me really excited for it. Now we're back to the question, right? Does Games Workshop still make the best miniatures? Design-wise, I don't know that that's true anymore. I think they make some of the best. I think that they are still consistently very, very good with their designs. And I think really consistency is a key thing to look for as well. Generally speaking, they tend to nail it more often than they don't. But I think it's fair to say that as things have moved on and as Games Workshop has improved, so has everyone else. I think it's unfair to just suggest that whatever Games Workshop touches will naturally be better than anything else. I don't think that's true anymore, and I don't think it's been true for quite some time. And especially with the explosion of 3D printing, the number of independent, smaller creators who've managed to get designs out, and I'm talking specifically ones who have a vision of their own. I'm not a big fan of just, I made Space Marines again, but with an extra spike on a shoulder pad. If you like that, that's totally fine. That's not something that really fills me with excitement when I see it. There is so much out there that is on par with what Games Workshop produce if you're looking from a like a design standpoint. And there are a few things out there that I'm just going to say, that weird bird wooden dragon thing, I think that might be a new favourite. And I think I might put that above a lot of what Games Workshop has put out recently, which is saying a lot because they've been putting out some absolute bangers as of late. Terrain-wise, I mean, we said it before, it's not their focus, it's not what they tend to put the most time and effort and work into, and as such, it's hardly surprising that I think other companies have stepped up and released things that are, for the most part, better than what Games Workshop does. Quality-wise, that is where we get into an interesting point, because the 3D printing side of things, that can be very variable, right? That sort of depends on the machine used, the experience of the person using it, where you've got it from, whether you printed it yourself, whether it printed first time, whether you had failures. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there, and there is the whole, toxic materials thing, which isn't great, whereas just plastic, if you go pure plastic from Games Workshop, you're not going to get any of that. I think 9 times out of 10, when you get something from Games Workshop, it is of very, very good, high quality. It's very rare that something is completely knackered. I know that there are the occasional issues with huge mould lines or whatever, but those are still the exception as opposed to the norm. And I think whilst that does tend to show up a fair bit, with the sheer amount of stuff they shift, I feel like overall the quality is very, very good. Now, for some of the stuff that we've had a look at today, I don't know. I actually don't know the quality of it. I know that the Kings of War stuff, I've got a good friend who has got a couple of armies for Kings of War, and they have never had any complaints in terms of the quality of those models. Archon Studio, I've had loads of experience with, and really no issues with that at all. When it comes to Conquest, no idea. But I'm looking forward to finding out, because those bigger models are plastic. So there is going to be a direct point of comparison. There's also, we've not talked about things like Malifaux as well, which, again, Malifaux, very different stylistically. The models that I put together have been a little bit finicky, but okay. I feel like, though, just through sheer size, through sheer experience, through just the amount shipped, Games Workshop are really, really consistent when it comes to the quality of their stuff. So I guess the answer to the question for me is sort of. They are still sort of the best, but they're not the best at everything. And there are plenty of other options out there if you no longer find yourself interested by what they do. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway. That's the thing that's actually most exciting about actually thinking about what's outside of like the Games Workshop ecosystem. There are 1,000,000,001 absolutely fantastic looking miniatures that if you want to step out of that comfort zone for a bit, you'll be able to find something incredible that you really, really like. The fact that it doesn't have their name on the box really won't make a difference when it comes to your enjoyment of owning it in the long run, if you're prepared to put the extra work in, should it not be as good, quality-wise, when you do the assembly and painting. That was very rambly, but I'm done. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know whether there's a specific manufacturer, a specific game that you find is just really, really good. I mean, there's also like Warcrow, and there's, what is it, Frostgrave, Stargrave as well. There's a lot. There's a lot out there. We did mention War Machine. Oh, Conflict 47 as well. Look, there's a lot out there. If there is something that you specifically find is simply better than Games Workshop when it comes to the miniatures, let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, especially the mini swap link in the description and in the pinned comment. Thank you again to Miniswap for sponsoring the video. I'll see you for the next one.